Hello students, welcome to today's class. Today we are going to read Natural Resources Part 2, Chapter 14 of your Class 9 Science book. Students, in my last class we covered the topics natural resources, resources on the earth, biosphere, air, importance of atmosphere, uh, air pollution, water and water pollution, and today we are going to cover the second half, and the topics are soil formation, soil erosion, biogeochemical cycles, greenhouse effect and ozone layer. So we will start with soil. In my last class we covered the natural resources, water and air, that is hydrosphere and atmosphere. And today we are going to continue from soil, that is lithosphere part of the earth. Soil is formed by a very slow process, that is by weathering of rocks. Plants grow in the soil. Soil is also home for many microbes and other microorganisms. So soil is formed from rocks. When rocks become powder, they powder down by some process and mix with humus or dead and decaying parts of organisms, then soil is formed. And soil is formed by a process called weathering. So what is this weathering? Let us know. Breaking down of rocks into fine particles of soil is called weathering. And weathering happens through different factors. So what factors are responsible for the process of weathering? Sun, water, wind, living organisms. These are the factors that cause weathering of rocks and help in the formation of soil. So let us see how these factors cause weathering. First is by sun. How sun causes weathering? By thermal expansion. During the daytime, by the heat of the sun, the rocks expand. The rocks get heated and expand. And during the night time, what happens? Rocks get cooled down and contract. Now there is repeated expansion and contraction of rocks, and this causes weathering. This expansion and contraction is not even at all parts of the rocks, and this causes weathering, means breaking down the rocks into smaller pieces. Then water. How water causes? Rainwater enters into the cracks of the rocks, and when this water freezes in colder regions, it expands. You know water expands on cooling, so this water expands and breaks apart the rocks. Then also the flowing water has a lot of force, and this flowing water gradually breaks the rocks into smaller pieces. And when flowing water goes downstreams, it carries rock particles along with it, and the rock pieces they rub against each other and become still finer pieces. Strong winds erode rock and transfer sand from one place to another. Living organisms also cause weathering. How? The roots of plants grow between the cracks of the rocks. And as the plants grow, the roots also grow and make the cracks bigger and break the rocks into smaller pieces. And lichens and mosses, they grow to a large extent on the surface of the rocks, and they release some chemicals which powder down the rocks, and by this they also cause weathering. Now, what does soil contain? What does soil contain? Soil contains small particles of rocks. That is, when rocks powder down, they make the main part of soil. And humus, decayed living organisms is called humus, and various forms of microscopic organisms are also there in the soil. Friends, you can carry out a simple test at home to see what soil contains. I have carried out at my home. You can see What you have to do, it's a very simple test, but we cannot carry out right now because it takes few hours to observe the things. I have carried it out. You can take some water in a glass, then you can mix some soil in this water and keep the glass to stand for few hours. Then the result will be like this. What you can observe is that, friends, you please carry out this experiment at home and you can observe most of these layers easily. You can observe at the base the gravels or small stones. Then you can see coarse sand, means the bigger particles of sand. Then you can see fine sand, and next you can see the layer of silt, then water with clay particles, and at the top you can see the parts of dead animals and plants floating on the water. This is the humus part of soil. Now soil pollution. Like water pollution and air pollution, soil also gets polluted. Human beings are polluting all these natural resources, and soil is also getting polluted like water and air. What are the causes of soil pollution then? That is long use of fertilizers and pesticides. You know, long use of fertilizers and pesticides use water pollution also and air pollution also, and they cause soil pollution too. If farmers use heavy fertilizers for long period of time, then it deteriorates the quality of the soil and plants do not grow properly on the polluted soil. Then industrial waste. Industries release their waste without treating them into soil. They dump the waste onto the soil, onto the land, and this causes soil pollution. Then what are the effects of soil pollution? First is decrease in soil fertility. As I said, long-term use of fertilizers and pesticides, they reduce the quality of the soil and there is less growth of plants, less growth of crops. Health problems. How health problem is caused by soil pollution? When plants are grown on the polluted soil, human beings consume the products of these plants and the chemicals enter into human body through the crops or through the vegetables or fruits. Soil pollution kills the soil microorganisms that recycle nutrients in the soil. So there are many microorganisms that are very useful for us, for the entire world, and they recycle nutrients in the soil. So soil pollution kills these useful microorganisms. And soil pollution also kills the earthworms. The earthworms, you know, are farmer friendly and they help in making the humus for the soil, and when they are killed, it's not good for the soil. Then friends, soil erosion. What is soil erosion? Removal of topmost layer of soil by wind, water or other activities is called soil erosion. The wearing away of the topmost layer of the soil is called soil erosion. Then what are the effects of soil erosion? First is loss of fertility, which results in desertification. So loss of fertility, as I said, that the topmost layer of the soil is most important for the growth of plants. The topmost layer of the soil contains humus and the root of the plants, specifically root of the crops, grow in this layer. And when the topmost layer of the soil will not be there, then there will not be growth of plants and gradually a place can convert a change into a desert, and this process is called desertification. Then landslides in hilly areas. You know, when there will be no topmost layer of the soil, then there will be no plants, there will be no trees to hold the soil tightly. So that's why landslides may happen in hilly areas if soil erosion occurs in those areas. Clogging of drains and water reservoirs by the waste of soil. Yes, the drains and water reservoirs are clogged by the wash of soil. Then we will know how to prevent soil erosion. How can we prevent soil erosion? Afforestation means by planting a lot of trees we can prevent soil erosion. Terrace farming. Terrace farming is done in hilly areas, and when we do terrace farming, then the flow of the water slows down. Since water carries soil along with it, so the flow of the water slows down and it can check soil erosion. Then crop rotation. After harvesting a crop, farmers should not leave the land barren because otherwise rainwater may cause soil erosion. So, farmers should grow another crop or should grow some grass after harvesting a crop. Then building dams. By building dams also soil erosion can be checked, because by building dams we can check the floods, and floods always wash away the top layer of the soil. So friends, now it's time to answer. There are some questions. How is soil formed? Soil is formed by the process of weathering. Weathering is caused by different factors like sun, wind, water and living organisms. Then, what is soil erosion? Soil erosion is the wearing away of the topmost layer of the soil. Then, what are the methods of preventing or reducing soil erosion? The methods of preventing or reducing soil erosion are by terrace farming, by afforestation, by crop rotation and by building dams. Then friends, come to biogeochemical cycles. This is a new term for you, biogeochemical cycles. Bio means life, geo means earth. So there is continuous cycle of chemicals between the biological world and geological world. This is called biogeochemical cycle. So the cycling of matter between the biotic and abiotic components is called biogeochemical cycle. The biotic and abiotic components or living and non-living components in biosphere are not separate from each other. They continuously interact with each other, and there is continuous flow of matter or nutrients between the living and non-living world in the biosphere. And this flow of matter, this cycle of matter or nutrient between biological world and geological world is called biogeochemical cycle. The four important biogeochemical cycles are water cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle and oxygen cycle. You can see all these four things are very important for the living world: water, carbon, nitrogen and oxygen. And these things are continuously cycled in nature. We will go through these cycles one by one. And we will start with water cycle. You have already some previous knowledge about water cycle in your previous classes. The whole process in which water evaporates and falls on the land as rain and later flows back into the sea by a river is known as water cycle. We have already learnt how rain occurs, and you know water formation of rain or water cycle basically involves these three processes: evaporation, condensation and precipitation. So how water cycle occurs we will see through this picture. You can see during the daytime, because of the heat of the sun, a lot of water vapor comes into the atmosphere by the process of evaporation. And there is also another process that causes, that adds water vapor to the atmosphere. And what is that process? Transpiration, right? So by the process of transpiration, plants release a lot of water vapor into atmosphere. And when hot air goes up, it carries these water vapors along with it. And as the air goes up, it cools down, and the water vapors present in the atmosphere condense. They condense to form tiny droplets of water. These tiny droplets of water are held together and they form the clouds. And on further cooling, they condense more and they join to form heavier droplets of water, and these heavy droplets of water they fall down on the earth as rain. Now a part of this rainwater seeps into the ground and adds to the underground water, and the rest part of the water joins the seas finally through the rivers. This is how water cycle occurs in nature. By evaporation or transpiration, then condensation, then precipitation, then the water flows back to sea or goes to the underground water. There is continuous flow of water on the earth, a continuous cycle of water on the earth. Then we will go to nitrogen cycle. You know, nitrogen is an essential constituent of proteins, nucleic acids and vitamins. It's a very important element. And what is nitrogen cycle? The sequence in which nitrogen passes from the atmosphere to the soil and organisms and then is eventually released back into the atmosphere is called nitrogen cycle. Then what is nitrogen fixation actually? Nitrogen fixation is a part of nitrogen cycle. Although atmosphere contains 78% of the nitrogen, but this free nitrogen cannot be utilized by the plants or by animals. This free nitrogen has to be fixed. Fixed means it has to be converted into some usable form. What is this usable form? Means nitrites or nitrates or ammonium. So these usable forms can only be absorbed by plants and can be used. And this free oxygen in the atmosphere cannot be used by the plants. And this process of conversion of atmospheric nitrogen into usable forms is called nitrogen fixation. And how this nitrogen fixation occurs? How nitrogen is fixed? Let us see. By nitrogen fixing bacteria. You know, there are a particular type of bacteria called rhizobium bacteria. They occur in the root nodules of leguminous plants. What are these root nodules? These nodules are bead-like structures in the roots. You can see the bead-like structures in the root are called root nodules, and the bacterium rhizobium bacteria, they are present in the root nodules. They have a symbiotic life relationship along with the leguminous plants, and that means they mutually benefit each other. The leguminous plants they benefit these rhizobium bacteria, and rhizobium bacteria they benefit leguminous plants. And these bacteria are capable of fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere. That is, they can convert the atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia, and now this ammonia can be readily utilized by the plants. And there is also another group of bacteria, free living bacteria and blue green algae. They can also fix nitrogen from the atmosphere, but they do not have any symbiotic relationship. They live freely in the soil. And you will be surprised to see that lightning also helps in nitrogen fixation. During lightning, high temperature and pressure they cause breaking of the nitrogen, the bond in nitrogen molecule, and nitrogen molecule react with water and convert into nitrites and nitrates. These nitrites and nitrates are dissolved in rainwater and come to the soil and then utilized by plants. This contributes lightning nitrogen fixation contributes about 10% of the total nitrogen fixation. Now we will see how nitrogen cycle occurs in nature. Just look at this picture and I will explain how nitrogen cycle occurs. You will see atmospheric nitrogen is first fixed by rhizobium bacteria which are present in the leguminous plants, in the root nodules of leguminous plants, or nitrogen also gets fixed by nitrogen fixing bacteria and blue green algae which live freely in the soil. Now after fixation of nitrogen, it is converted into nitrites or nitrates or ammonia, and these compounds are readily used by plants. Now plants use these compounds to prepare protein, and which gets transferred to animal bodies through food chain. Now when these plants and animals are died, what happens? The decomposers act upon their bodies and release the nitrogen compounds into the soil. The decomposers act upon their bodies and release the nitrogen compounds. There is another group of bacteria, they are called denitrifying bacteria. This group of bacteria, they immediately act upon these nitrogen compounds and release back atmospheric nitrogen, free nitrogen into atmosphere. This is how the entire cycle of nitrogen cycle occurs. So friends, now we will go to carbon cycle. Carbon is an essential part of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, nucleic acids and vitamins. It is an essential part of many nutrients you can see. And carbon is found in various forms on the earth. And what are the forms? Diamond and graphite found in the soil are made up of carbon. Carbon is present in the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Carbon also occurs as carbonate and bicarbonate salts in minerals. The endoskeletons and exoskeletons of various aquatic animals are also formed from carbonate salts. And now we will see how carbon cycle occurs in nature. Look at this picture. You see, carbon is present in the form of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. This carbon dioxide is used by the process of photosynthesis by plants. Plants use carbon dioxide and water to synthesize carbohydrates. These carbohydrates gets transferred to animal bodies because animals depend on plants for food. And now when plants and animals, they by the process of respiration, they release carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now this is not the only way by which carbon cycle occurs. Carbon dioxide is released to atmosphere by another process too, by the process of decomposition. When the plant body and animal body, when they die, they are decomposed by bacteria and fungi, and during the process of decomposition again carbon dioxide goes back to atmosphere. And there is another way through which carbon dioxide goes back to atmosphere. Friends, you know that when plant and animal bodies get buried for millions of years, then what happens? Fossil fuel is formed. These fossil fuels like coal and petroleum, when they are burnt, during the process of combustion also carbon dioxide is released into atmosphere. You could see carbon dioxide is used up by photosynthesis and again goes back to atmosphere by respiration, by decomposition of dead bodies and by the burning of fossil fuels. So this is how carbon cycle occurs in nature. Now we will learn about greenhouse effect. This is not a new term for you, but we will understand what is the greenhouse effect exactly. Do you know what is a greenhouse? A greenhouse is an enclosure made of glass. The glass has the property to trap and hold temperature, and the inside of the greenhouse has the temperature much higher than the outside. That's why tropical plants are grown inside greenhouses in colder climates. And how this is related with atmospheric phenomenon? You know, some gases like carbon dioxide and methane prevent the escape of heat from the earth. These are called greenhouse gases. carbon dioxide and methane, these are called greenhouse gases. They prevent the escape of heat from the earth. An increase in the percentage of such gases in the atmosphere would cause the average temperature of the earth to increase, and this is called greenhouse effect. Because of these gases, the temperature of the earth is increasing because of the increase of these gases. This is called greenhouse effect, and the result is global warming. And you know what is the harm if global warming occurs? There will be melting of ice from the cold regions, there will be melting of ice from the icebergs, and there will be increase in the sea level, and the result is displacement and loss of habitat. So this is greenhouse effect. Now we will understand how oxygen cycle occurs. Like carbon, nitrogen, oxygen is also an essential constituent of carbohydrates, proteins, fats and nucleic acids. All these are very important compounds in living world for the living forms. So oxygen is found in air as carbon dioxide and in the earth's crust as carbonates, sulfates and nitrates. And we will see how oxygen cycle occurs. Oxygen is used up by three processes. It's very simple to understand. Oxygen is used up by three processes: respiration, combustion and formation of oxides of nitrogen. These are the three main processes by which oxygen is used up. But there is only one way by which oxygen returns to atmosphere, and that is photosynthesis by plants. So photosynthesis is the only way by which oxygen returns to atmosphere. This is how oxygen cycle occurs in nature. Now it's again time to answer some questions. What are the different states in which water is found during the water cycle? Water is found in all the three forms during the water cycle. In solid form as snow and ice, and in liquid form as water in water bodies, and in gaseous form as water vapor in atmosphere. Next question. Name two biologically important compounds that contain both oxygen and nitrogen. Proteins and nucleic acids are two biologically important compounds that contain both oxygen and nitrogen. Question 3. List any three human activities which would lead to an increase in the carbon dioxide content of air. That is establishing the factories and industries, running vehicles on the road, and even by breathing we give carbon dioxide to atmosphere. This is also an human activity which adds carbon dioxide to atmosphere. When there is more population, there is more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Then question 4. What is the greenhouse effect? Greenhouse effect means there are some gases like carbon dioxide and methane present in the atmosphere which hold and trap heat, and they cause the increase of temperature on the earth. This is called greenhouse effect because these gases act as greenhouse for the earth. Question 5. What are the two forms of oxygen found in the atmosphere? The two forms of oxygen found in the atmosphere are oxygen gas, which contains 2 atoms of oxygen, and ozone gas, which consists of 3 atoms of oxygen. And lastly friends, we will learn about ozone layer. There is another gas in the atmosphere, that is ozone. Ozone gas forms a layer in stratosphere and protects us from UV rays. You know, this ozone molecule, one ozone molecule contains 3 atoms of oxygen. You know, one oxygen molecule in the atmosphere contains 2 atoms of oxygen, and one ozone molecule contains 3 atoms of oxygen. Now this ozone layer, ozone gas forms a layer in the stratosphere part of the atmosphere. In the stratosphere layer, ozone forms a layer, And this layer is not very thick, it's about 3 to 5 millimeter in thickness only. And what is the significance of this layer is that this layer absorbs the harmful radiations, harmful ultraviolet radiations that come from the sun and protects us from many harmful effects. So, if these ultraviolet radiations reach the earth's surface, they can cause cataract, they can cause skin cancer, they can reduce our immune system, even they can harm the growth of plants, and they can distort the marine ecosystem. So, this ozone layer is very important for us. But what is the matter of concern is that because of air pollution, there is a hole that has been observed over the Antarctica region. This is not exactly a hole, but at this place the ozone layer has become thinner, and this is a matter of concern. So, scientists are trying to resolve this problem by adopting some method. Actually, this ozone layer is depleted by a compound called chlorofluorocarbon, which is very harmful for this ozone layer. This chlorofluorocarbon contains chlorine and fluorine, and this is released by the gadgets like refrigerator and air conditioner from our houses. So, scientists are trying to replace some other gas, other compound to be used in conditioners and refrigerators, and by this reducing the air pollution. So, with this we come to the end of the chapter. Thank you friends. I hope you understood the concepts well.